Hi and welcome everyone. Welcome to Joomla Next. Joomla Next is an event that Techjoomla organizes every month to bring you some of the finest speakers in the Joomla space and to kind of remove some of the mystery around what's happening next in Joomla, what's coming next. So we started this event with the launch of Joomla 4. And since then, we have had some amazing speakers who have helped us understand and explore what Joomla has to offer. And today I'm proud to present Steve. Steve has been around in Joomla from a long, long time. You can listen to a lot of his talks. They're out there on YouTube. Frankly, I would say that I've been following Steve very closely for a long time as well. He's built an amazing business around Joomla. He started his journey. Steve, it would be great if you can, besides your presentation, also talk about a little bit about your journey with Joomla and a little bit before what you were doing. And I really like that story. It's amazing, and that would give a lot of people a lot of context to the topic today as well. So Steve, just to introduce Steve, he's from Northport, Florida. He's an alumni of Swansea University, and he's a founder of OS Training. And today he's the CEO of Joomlashack, which has been selling templates and extensions for the Joomla community since 2006. It's one of the cornerstones of the Joomla community, and he's also founder of Publish Press and co-founder of Blocktivity and Rollup. More than 14 years of a professional career with a lot of entrepreneurial pursuits. He's a Joomla evangelist, an entrepreneur. And today, Steve is going to be talking to us about how to keep a Joomla business growing in 2021. So I think this is an amazing topic. A lot of people have been asking those questions. What happens next with Joomla? Will Joomla 4 help kind of Joomla bring in a new audience? And if you are an extension developer or somebody who is building a business around Joomla, whether it is providing services with Joomla or selling extensions around Joomla or templates around Joomla, this is definitely a talk you don't want to miss. And this comes from one of the most successful people I've seen in the Joomla space, who has really had a very nice approach to growing his business. And having said that, I'd like to hand it over to Steve. Steve, are you there?
Yes. Hey, Path.
Hi. Thank you so much for being with us today, Steve.
Oh, you're welcome. I've interviewed you a few times over the years, so it makes a change to be on the other side of the mic.
Yeah, and it's a really big pleasure to being interviewing you, Steve. I think we have had a few times where I've been on the other side, and I think this should be a very interesting one, even for me personally, for the Joomla ecosystem in general. Really great to have you. Thank you for agreeing to be here.
Yeah, normally when I'm talking with you, it's about rolling out some massive Joomla project to millions of people across the Indian subcontinent. And I don't have anything quite that exciting to talk about today. But I am going to talk a little bit about how you and me and some of our colleagues in the Joomla world do keep our Joomla businesses growing in 2021.
Absolutely. I think that's an amazing topic that you've chosen, and a very relevant one at that, something very necessary for Joomla in 2021. I think the extension businesses around Joomla have been a keystone to the success of Joomla. So I think for that ecosystem to grow and scale, more and more businesses need to learn to sustain, need to kind of learn from each other, so that the entire ecosystem kind of benefits from it. So really excited to hear from you today, Steve.
Yeah, some of these things I'm going to talk about today are things I've been preaching to other developers for several years now. Do this, you should do this. Really trying quite hard to convince some other developers to take the advice that I have in today's presentation.
Absolutely. So over to you, Steve. We will make this session very interactive. We don't have people directly on Zoom. People have joined on YouTube. As of right now, there are around 30 people online. I see that number growing. They're all very excited to hear from you. So I'll hand it over to you from here, and we can get started.
Awesome. Can you see my screen?
Yep, it's up.
Cool. I apologize for the slightly funky formatting. you get a preview of the next slides. Hey, Google Slides was objecting to maybe because of 2 screens, maybe because of a couple of odd images, but Google Slides was having a fit this morning. So I'm going to be talking about how to keep a Joomla business growing in 2021. And at different points, I have some questions for the people in the audience. I'm interested in the opinion of the Joomla community at large. So at different points, I'm going to throw out the questions. And Path, you said you might be able to take a look at the YouTube comments and maybe read them back if people are able to comment.
Absolutely, I'll be doing that.
Awesome. So this particular topic, the title, almost has an acknowledgement in the title that it's not easy to keep a Joomla business growing in 2021. I think there's an entirely separate conversation to be had about Joomla's growth. And I'm not going to try and get much into that today. If you're complaining about X feature not happening or Y not being added to the core, this is not really going to be the conversation for you. I'm going to be focused pretty strictly on people who are running businesses in the Joomla space and how they can keep their motor ticking over in 2021. And I did slightly modify this presentation in the last few days because there have been a couple of Joomla companies that have closed. They've shut their doors. You go to their website and you'll see a notice on the screen, we're closing, we're done, sorry, goodbye. And I'm curious, Path, this might be a good question for you or maybe for the YouTube audience. We are always interested in acquiring Joomla companies. And I know there are quite a few other Joomla companies out there who are willing to take on extensions or templates or products. So my question is, why did these Joomla companies suddenly close overnight? Why are they not being acquired? Why are they not being taken on by new developers? So if we have any comments about that in the YouTube section, I'd be curious. Path, I know you've actually, like us, you've actually kicked the tires and listened to some of these developers who have closed. Do you have any insight into why they ended up just closing rather than being acquired?
Definitely, I'll try to give you some insight from few that I talked to. So one of the things that when people approach us, with a proposal where they want to get acquired, there are some questions that we typically ask us, and typically they talk about recurring revenue. They talk about how many customers do they have that keep coming back. So basically, what are their renewal rates and so on. So typically, when we pass on an opportunity like that, it typically means that the liability of taking it on is much higher than the benefits it will bring, because one of the things about inheriting a company, whether you pay for it or not, is that there is a promise to keep to the customers of being able to keep rolling out releases, and rolling out releases needs money. So what we basically check is that is there sustainability in that business? If it's not there today, does it at least have the promise of sustainability based on the numbers? And what we found till now mainly is that the numbers don't add up.
Yeah, these businesses are closing simply because the numbers don't add up for them. We've been at Joomlashack, we've been in a slightly fortunate position that about 5 years ago, we wrote a blog post saying that we were willing to adopt Joomla extensions, that if you were looking to get out of the Joomla business, and this was 5 years ago now, then come to us and we will take a long, hard look. And if we can make it work, we will acquire your business. And we ended up acquiring, I think, 24, 25 different extensions. ranging from JCal Pro, which was or still is, a pretty powerful mapping extension, to Shack Forms. We took over XMap, which was an old sitemap and is now called OSMap. And as a result, we got a kind of a reputation in the Joomla community for being willing to adopt extensions from companies that are closing. And so we've had the chance to look at the books of nearly all of these companies that have closed their doors. And I'm not going to share any specifics, but they have one thing in common, and that is that they all have good products. That really was never the problem. They all had good developers behind them, and particularly the products that we took on, the ones that we chose to take on, they had some excellent products. We'll take that product, we can make something of it, but by and large, the companies that are closing their doors ended up with no revenue. And by no revenue, I'm talking like just hundreds of dollars a month, just very little left in terms of actual income. There was not much to sustain them. And we've been there. We took over Joomlashack in 2016, and Joomlashack was in a similar position. It was making just a few $100s a month, and the owner at the time thought it was just better to close Joomlashack rather than try and keep it going. We were a little too stubborn for that, and we managed to turn it around largely through acquiring these different products. So we've been there. This isn't a new problem. Joomla companies have been coming and going for years. There was a very good chance that Joomlashack would have been one of these companies back in 2016. So it's not uncommon for companies with good products to end up with just no revenue and nothing worth acquiring. But it is possible to make money in Joomla in 2021. And there are companies out there that are making it work. Now, I'm not saying they're making millions of dollars or that people are rushing in to acquire them, that they're getting big offers thrown at them. But these are companies who are able to stay in business, to keep growing. I would say, for context, that for some of these companies, growing 5% every year in 2021 is a good outcome. That you keep your staff employed, you keep the products going, you keep the customers happy, and you get a little bit of growth. Some of these companies may be growing a little faster, but it is possible to make money in Joomla in 2021. So I'm curious, these are names that a lot of people in the Joomla community know. What is it that these companies do well? I'll put that out to the YouTube audience if they have any comments.
Yeah,
we're looking at companies like...
We do have some answers that have come from the audience, Steve, for your earlier question. So maybe if you can repeat your current question, and while the audience ponders and shares on that, I'll kind of share what we have on the chat right now.
Sure thing. So my first question was about the unsuccessful companies. Why are they just closing their doors? Why are they being acquired? What kind of answers did we get for that question?
Yeah, so what we have here is that, so one of the comments we have is that they can't find evolution because the Joomla ecosystem is too narrow nowadays. That's one of the questions. One more answer I see is that I saw that and wondered the same thing on the JD forum. He did mention that I had reached out to other entities, but it was odd that another company did not pick up. So this, I think, is about Joomdev. And yeah, I think the only answer we really have to your question is that the Joomla ecosystem is too narrow. Others are comments about the Joomla dev guys shutting down. But this could be a good thing to comment on, Steve, that the Joomla ecosystem is too narrow for growth. What would you?
It probably is too narrow for big growth. There are, say, products in the WordPress space which are growing to 1 million, 3 million, 5 million users, and you're not going to see that growth in the Joomla space anymore. So we're not talking about hyper growth. Not talking about massive growth, but we're talking about the ability to make money, to employ staff, to keep the products going, and to I think for quite a few of these people who are running, say, Peter from Regular Labs, or Nick from Akiba, or Vic from Watchful, looking at the ability to pay your staff, take home a nice paycheck, and grow your business at the end of each month. So we have some successful companies on this list. Joomshaper have an excellent page builder. Regular Labs have a suite of really useful plugins. Akiba has extensions which, according to some stats, I think are installed on 80% of Joomla sites. You guys at Techjoomla rolling out some massive projects across India. Apart from having a blue and black logo, which seems to connect a lot of these companies, do we have any suggestions in the YouTube audience for what these companies that are making a success of it are doing well?
So there is one answer from Jeff Wilson. So one thing is that they're working with both WordPress and Joomla, and WordPress widgets are often much more expensive and have shorter support periods.
Yeah, Cloud Access, I think, has some WordPress. Akiba has tried some WordPress. My Sites, I think, supports WordPress. Watchful supports WordPress. Watchful is the one I'm most familiar with. I know there's still 90% Joomla there. Yeah, maybe for their future growth, at least, having some WordPress helps. But I've picked these companies because I think they do make the vast majority of their revenue in Joomla still.
Yeah. So so there's one more. Yeah. So I have Megan saying blue and black is a good spot, the common one.
Yeah. I'm looking at Joomlashack at this list. We've got our logo at the bottom there, and I'm glad we have a little bit of blue in our logo. We fit in there. So at least my answer to the question that I posed, what do these companies do well, is three things. They have recurring revenue, they have higher prices, and they have good communication. And not all of these companies do all of those things. You may find one of those companies maybe has recurring revenue and good communication. I'd say that Joomlashack fits in that space, that we don't necessarily have higher prices, but we do have two of those three things. You could take Regular Labs. I think Regular Labs are similar. They have recurring revenue. This was something I bugged Peter from Regular Labs to do for a long time. He has recurring revenue and he has good communication. You'll always see him talking with customers on his forum, or you can find him on Twitter regularly. A couple of the SaaS services like Watchful or MySites.guru, they have recurring revenue and higher prices. And I think with Phil from MySites, he's also a pretty heavy user of social media, and you'll find him communicating a lot. And the companies that we have looked at, that we have turned down, the companies that have asked to be acquired, the companies that have offered their products to us, every time I get the email, I can almost guarantee they don't have these three things. Like clockwork, I open the email, no recurring revenue, check. Low prices, check. Last update on their blog post, so October 2018, check. So if you want to grow a Joomla company and be successful in 2021, it is possible if you do the basics right. And quite a few of the companies that we've seen try to get acquired have just not been doing the basics right. That's not to speak negatively of them. I think most of them are developers first rather than business people, or maybe it was a side project for them. But it is a tougher world now for Joomla companies in 2021. And if you are not doing the basics right, you are going to get found out much more easily. So I have
We do have some, so I think before you move on, Steve, there's some interesting comments I'd like to share from the YouTube chat.
Go for
So
it.
Nicholas Oliver is talking about ACY Mailing, which is a French company, which
Great example.
I think they have a very good, I think again, they tick those boxes, recurring revenue, and they are in the WordPress and Joomla space.
Yeah.
Jeff Wilson is saying is that generally WordPress developers are charging more per product, therefore it is more income.
Yes.
We have Hamid Reza saying that necessarily the price of the extension might not be affecting these failures. We have one more comment from James who says that do you think a lot of these are not exclusively in the Joomla space but have market in a spectrum of services and areas? And we have Jeff.
Yeah, some of the ones that have closed are kind of offshoots of agencies, and they're not entirely focused on the extensions, which may partly explain why they're able to let go, because they have other sources of income. But AC mailing is a great example. I should have added that to my original list.
Yeah.
So let me talk about recurring revenue first, because it is probably the absolute cornerstone of having a successful business in 2021. This is a chart of Joomlashack's revenue every month in 2021. Does anyone want to have a guess what the different colored bars are? What do you think the dark green and the light green indicate on those revenue charts? So say we make more than this, but so we make $10,000 a month. Each of these charts, each of these bars is $10,000. Do we have any guesses as to what the dark green portion or the light green portion is?
I'm guessing it's total revenue versus recurring, light showing total versus green showing recurring out of that.
Almost, yes. So the whole chart is our revenue. So that's why the October chart is a little short, because it's October 27th today. I took the chart a couple of days ago, so October is not yet finished. But the light green is our new income each month. And the dark green is the recurring revenue. So I'd say probably on average about 80% of our revenue comes from recurring revenue, and only 20% is from new sales.
Yeah, one more company to add to that list probably, Steve, is Stack Ideas.
Oh yeah, that's a good example too. Yeah, if I give this presentation again, I'll have some more good examples. So yeah, recurring revenue makes up at least 80% of our monthly income on average. And we've seen figures from people who ask their customers to renew each year, and there's just a massive drop-off compared to actually having recurring automatic subscriptions every year. It's just very difficult to build a business unless you can predict what your income is going to be each month. Joomlashack has become almost ridiculously predictable. At the beginning of each month, I can sit down and I can tell you how much money we're going to make and be within a few $100s. And that allows us to hire staff, to sponsor things. That allows us to grow the business because we know at the end of each month how much money we're going to have in the bank, how much money we can afford to pay in salaries, how much money we can afford to pay for X, Y, and Z. I know some people hate it, but you know what people hate more? That is the developers they rely on going out of business. We do get some complaints, but really not that many these days. And we have a page on our site explaining clearly that we do recurring subscriptions, why we do recurring subscriptions, that it helps us stay in business. And I would say that if you look around the Joomla community and you're looking to buy a product and the developer does not have recurring subscriptions enabled, I'd be a little doubtful as to how long that company is going to be around. Some of the very best ones may be able to make it. I think Nick from Akiba recently turned off his recurring subscriptions for technical reasons. I think Nick is going to be okay. But anyone who doesn't have extensions which are installed on 80% of Joomla sites is going to struggle if they don't have that automatic subscription setting turned on. So if you are looking to build a successful Joomla business in 2021, you need to have recurring revenue and you need to educate your customers about why it's important and why you do it. We've been banging this drum for about 5 years now, and every time I talk to another Joomla developer, I try and raise this issue with them and convince them to move to recurring revenue as well, if they haven't done so yet. And number two, this was mentioned a couple of times by the YouTube audience already. Higher prices. I think a few of the YouTube audience mentioned this in the context of WordPress plugins, which often charge higher prices. We have a Joomla extension listed on the screen in front of us, and this is a product by someone who is here today. Path. This is a Techjoomla product, right?
Yeah, that is a Techjoomla product.
$500 for a Joomla extension. Awesome. I mean, maybe not every extension can be that expensive, but can you take the audience quickly through what this product is and why you put this particular product to such a high price point?
Absolutely, Steve. So initially, it kind of started as a pricing experiment. This was a product that we were building that was going to be complicated to build, complicated to maintain. We were entering a very crowded market, not in the Joomla space in general, but generally. So just to kind of unravel the curtains around it, this is about Shika, our LMS extension. So it's a learning management platform for Joomla. And at that point when we started, I think Joomla LMS was one of the extensions around, and it wasn't a cheap extension either. It wasn't open source. At that point, it was a closed source kind of an extension, not listed on the Joomla extension directory. And they were charging somewhere around this at that point, a little bit cheaper, maybe, or a little bit more expensive. I don't remember. But the idea was that we wanted to see that if we were building something really serious, something that was enterprise ready on a lot of levels in terms of features, at that point when we started, we wanted to see is that will people buy this? Of course, what we did is that this pricing, when we started, I think we started with like $399 for, you know, kind of an early adapter kind of a subscription that we had for 1 year. This product was in beta for a year. We had people using it in production in that state. And then we kind of unraveled this pricing. So in that beta state, we got around 100 customers to use it. And that kind of gave us a confidence that, you know, people will be willing to pay if there is value. And we knew that this was a tough roadmap. This was not a simple product. Typically, that's one more thing, right? And that's a question to you, in fact, that simple products versus complex products. That's, I think, a question, and that should also be a function of a little bit of customer analysis. Uh, because anybody coming in the Joomla space, will they build something so complex? And if they will they need buy something like this, right? It's when you're doing something in a niche like Joomla, it's a decision on multiple levels. But we are proud to say now that we have a lot of people adopting Joomla because they want to use Shika.
Awesome.
Because those are the kind of features we're building in. So it started as a pricing experiment. I think if we slash prices, we'll probably get more customers for sure. But no plans to do that in the recent future, at least, because there's still a lot to build, very frankly. I would love to make it cheaper. Uh, but if you look at, I mean, this is like even within our portfolio of products, this really stands out, right? Our average prices are anywhere between $30 to $75, mostly $30, most of the subscription. But this is like 10x, right? Uh, so as I said, started as a pricing experiment, but I think maybe you don't need things to be this expensive. But yes, you need to price them in a way that you can actually sustain the product long term. Because typically when you're building a product, I feel it's like giving birth to a baby, right? You don't want to leave halfway. You want to make sure that you are there till it grows and, sustains itself. So that's
Yeah,
all.
these products are money losers to build often. Um, Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we decided to enter the WordPress space, building products there, and it's really taken 4 or 5 years of steady growth and investment to start to see payback and real returns from those products. And the same is true in Joomla as well. These extensions are expensive to produce, expensive to develop, and it's important to put those high prices out there because these are expensive things to build. I often don't think it's a coincidence that Joomla itself got started 15, 16 years ago, around the same time that a lot of newspapers were starting to go online for the first time. And back in that 2005, 2006, 2007 era, there were a lot of people saying, oh, newspapers should give away their content for free. Just put it online and people will come, we'll figure it out. And I think a lot of companies in the Joomla space had a similar attitude, and it just didn't work. That they got bypassed by WordPress companies who were willing to put their prices up, maybe not up to $700 a year, but it's really very normal to see WordPress plugins that are $150, $200, $250 a year. So higher prices are essential to keep your business ticking over, particularly as Joomla is not as strong as it was. Path, you mentioned it being a little more niche. If you have slightly fewer customers on offer, slightly fewer customers that you can actually attract, then you can't go mass market necessarily. You need to go a little bit up market instead. And then the third thing is good communication. Some of those companies that we mentioned earlier really do a very good job of talking with their audiences. I think Path, you are a great example with the work that you do, putting on different sessions, putting on different talks. Quite a few of the Joomla companies that are successful are very active on social media, at least their CEOs or main developers are. And here at Joomlashack, I've basically talked with our guys who are the developers and said, we need to do two things. We need to survive the Joomla 4 transition by getting our extensions ready, number one. That's your job. And number two, communicating almost constantly with our customers. We have a very active Facebook group and we post in it every day. literally every day you will see something from the Joomlashack team in there. So if someone is wondering whether they should spend their money at Joomlashack, are we around? Yes, we're around every day. You post a question, you'll probably get an answer in the Facebook group within a few hours. And we send a newsletter every week. Even if we don't necessarily have anything completely fresh to say, we'll recycle something useful, put a new spin on it. Once a month, we do a roundup of all the news in the Joomla community. And people seem to really love that. Just finding, 15, 20 useful links from other sites and showing them in a newsletter. And it's been reassuring. A lot of people have said, oh, I haven't heard from the other companies. Let me spend my money with Joomlashack instead, because I know you're here, I know you're active, that I can trust you to update your products for Joomla 4. And so these are the 3 cornerstones that I recommend people follow to keep a Joomla business growing in 2021. Don't have to follow all 3. Even a couple of these are good enough, but for the businesses that just close, but just go out of business, I can almost guarantee they are following none of them. And there is I think a slight knock-on effect from these core principles as to what kinds of things are going to be successful over the next few years in the new Joomla 4 world. If you're thinking about services or products that are going to attract recurring revenue and higher prices and are going to enable you to put out some good communication around them, then something like templates are unlikely to fit that mold. I think what you've seen is quite a lot of template companies going out of business. They've struggled in the WordPress side of things too. We hear quite regularly complaints from theme builders in WordPress about the market being saturated or it being very difficult to sell their products. We are on the fence at the moment about whether to update the Joomlashack templates for Joomla 4, because about 95% of our revenue comes from extensions. Path, you were talking about the slightly more complicated products. That's what people are willing to pay for. They're willing to pay for the LMSs, for the shopping carts, for calendars, for photo galleries. They are willing to pay on a recurring basis because it's important to their business, and they're willing to pay higher prices as well. Something like a template, people seem not to value. They don't want to pay again the next year because most likely you haven't really made any significant changes in the course of the year. And they seem accustomed to paying $30 for a template. Whereas quite a few of the companies on our successful Joomla companies list are extension developers, and quite a few of them increasingly are offering SaaS services. We had Watchful, we had MySites. I think there's one called Backup Monkey as well, which seems to be doing well. We had Cloud Access. As the templates start to fade as a source of revenue, you will see extensions and SaaS services start to become the strongest companies in the Joomla ecosystem. And so I think these 3 principles apply for extension developers, for SaaS companies, and they apply for agencies as well. If you're a Joomla agency selling web services, there are absolutely ways in which you can get recurring revenue from your customers, in which you can consider putting your prices up, and in which you can communicate regularly. These are not particularly new principles, but in the wake of seeing these companies closing recently, I think it's worth looking again at these principles, seeing how closely that our companies are sticking to them if we plan to be in business for the next few years. Now, following these three things are not going to be a guarantee of success, but not following these is almost certainly going to be a guarantee of failure. So I do think it is possible to keep growing a Joomla business in 2021. I came into this presentation with a list of about 10 companies that I know are doing well and growing, and the audience were able to throw out some more. It is possible to keep a Joomla business growing in 2021. If you have any follow-up questions, please do put them in the comments section here on YouTube, or, and I'm kind of taking my own advice on good communication, you can join our Facebook group, and I'll be posting resources from here, and also posting some follow-up questions for our audience there too. So Parth, thanks for having me. I think I've taken up the bulk of my presentation time. So if you have any questions in the YouTube chat, I'd love to hear them.
Absolutely, absolutely. So everyone, please keep the conversation flowing and keep the questions flowing. There have been some very interesting chats here. I think this has been one of the most interactive sessions we've had. Really good conversation in the YouTube chat. I think people are talking about why some of these companies have closed down at this juncture. Maybe Joomla 4 coming in and the effort needed to shift over is maybe something that triggered it. You did talk about, you talking to your team that what are the two things you need to do? One of them being, to kind of survive the move, right? So to say. And I think Megan has some interesting stats here that already with 30 million plus downloads of Joomla 4, it doesn't look too bad. I mean, in the sense that things are looking up. It's not that the world is all dark.
I will admit to being nervous. I think any Joomla company that was paying attention was nervous about the Joomla 4 upgrade. So far, touch wood, we haven't seen any significant problems with our revenue, with our customers. For several years now, the number one reason that people cancel at Joomlashack is because they're moving their platform to WordPress or somewhere like that. But the rate of that has not really changed. I think the Joomla 4 upgrade is manageable for Joomla companies. And if you're on top of things, you can make the move. But sure, are there companies that may have hung on a little bit longer? If Joomla 4 hadn't come along, sure, they could have bounced along a little bit longer, but they were probably headed for the same end in the short term anyway.
So Cindy has an interesting perspective where she's saying that what she has seen is that why they end up choosing WordPress over Joomla a lot of times is that Joomla extensions in terms of end user design or usability are clunkier compared to WordPress extensions, which seem to be more design first. So would you agree with that, Steve?
Yeah, they're definitely a little more cutting edge often in terms of pushing everything from advertisements and promotional offers to the interface design. We've had a few discussions over the years with companies moving into the WordPress space. It's a bigger market, but it's a lot tougher. For every space you try and enter, there are 10, 15, 20 well-financed, strong competitors with good user interfaces. good documentation, large user bases. Path, if you were to move Shika to WordPress, you'd move from being like easily one of the top 1 or 2 Joomla LMSs to being a tiny fish in a massive pond with some huge competitors. So yeah, the WordPress plugins are generally better. They have a bit more money, maybe some more talented designers. And yeah, I'm not going to. I'd probably agree with that YouTube commenter.
Yeah, I think Joomla has been more of a developer baby, and WordPress has always been more of a designer's. We have always had more designers adopt WordPress. Of course, over the years, Joomla has become so much more flexible. So you can really achieve a lot of flexibility in design while maintaining a good code base. But yeah, I think because a lot of the traditional WordPress audience has been designers, I think that I'm sure has an effect as well.
Yes, I think that is maybe changing a little bit.
Yeah.
I talked in the presentation about how themes and templates in general are shrinking down in importance, down the hierarchy a little bit. I think in WordPress and in Joomla, they're slowly being replaced by the page builder as the central experience. We have Joomshaper on our list of successful Joomla companies. I can't tell you how many support tickets we get that involve SP page builder in some way.
Yeah. I think Joomshaper has also taken an interesting route, right? That they don't do just templates, right? They do these simple extensions that will work with a template. So they're kind of trying to provide a complete solution. And
Yes.
I think that kind of pulls a lot of, market who are looking at something simple and plug and play, which will, help them quickly get there. And I think coupled with a page builder, then it kind of puts a lot of power in the hands of the user, right?
Yeah, Joomshaper is a company I admire. Kawashar has done an excellent job building them up.
Absolutely. So I think one comment we have is this is not specifically to the question, but Nicholas is saying that the content system in Joomla is more and more an issue, in my opinion. End users don't understand why there is a different UI for articles and some other. I'm not sure he's saying agenda. I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, I'd probably need a few more details to answer that question.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting that I think the template companies in Joomla were the biggest ones, right? Traditionally, I mean, if you look at the numbers, the likes of Joomlashack, who also closed recently, Joomla Art has been one of the bigger players. They always had the numbers, right? I mean, whenever I talked to Hung, the kind of numbers he talked about in numbers of users and everything was huge. But you're right. I mean, the ability to keep users sticking to the same template, I think, because designs change every 2-3 years, and that kind of also probably it's easier to acquire users, but it's also harder to retain in the template space.
100%. You take Joomla, they have taken on quite a few extensions over the years. I think they have Joom Social. They've swept up quite a lot of the extension companies.
Yeah.
Definitely a long way from being a pure template company these days.
Yeah. Now I think they're very much like a very mixed portfolio now, definitely. I think one good mention from Jeff is that UTheme seems to be moving in the right direction. Again, template.
I can't believe I left UTheme off the list of successful Joomla companies. Oh, they're one of the biggest and most successful of the lot. Okay, so already my slide was slightly crowded of successful Joomla companies.
I wish it gets more crowded, Steve, and I hope you have to put like 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, you know, it might make a good blog post. There are successful Joomla companies, and UTheme. I mentioned admiring Joomshaper. I admire some of the SaaS companies. We do work with Watchful. UTheme, right up there in terms of execution, in terms of communication, in terms of the work they do. So I feel like such an idiot for leaving them off the list.
Yeah, one
Yeah,
more
great
name.
company.
Joomla Tools is another name, I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Joomla Tools and Joomla Pages, the new service they're working on. Yeah, it's possible to keep growing a Joomla business in 2021.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think, yeah, I don't think we seem to have any more questions. Uh, So be pro, yeah, that one too. You're just getting, I think you're getting a lot
Yeah.
of fuel for your slides, Steve. By the time these mindsets, I think you'll need those 3 slides.
Well, you know what? I promised to write this up then. Say, hey, people are negative about Joomla in 2021. Maybe you're not going to make $1 million, but here is a list of 12, 15, maybe 20 companies who are still here, still paying good salaries, still making good products, and still making money in the Joomla space in 2021. So yeah, I'll share it with you, Path. I'll write this up. Thanks for the ideas, and if you see any more in those YouTube comments, let me know.
Absolutely.
I think it would be good to give a shout out to the Joomla companies that are still doing well.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think a big shout out to everyone who is kind of managed to kind of move, especially for companies who have been around for a long time, since the Mambo place. I mean, since the Mambo days to Joomla 1.5 to 3, which was like the last great migration, I would call it. I would say compared to that, Joomla 3 to Joomla 4 is not much of work. So it's not that hard. If you are a Joomla company doing Joomla 3 stuff, I want to move to Joomla 4, it's not that hard. And Joomla 4 will bring a lot of interesting things, which, and like we see some very positive numbers. So if you're still on the fence, I hope this session by Steve kind of helps you take the right step and continue to work with Joomla. I think there is some interesting things waiting to happen with Joomla. And this extension ecosystem is one of the big power drivers of Joomla. I think having solid extension creators with great support and great extensions is what makes Joomla powerful. So yeah, I hope a lot of these guys stick around and the list keeps growing, Steve.
Yeah, I hope to see Techjoomla on the list for many years to come.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Steve. We'll definitely have this session is recorded, so we'll have a recorded version up. The live stream will be available as well, the complete unedited version. And we will, Steve, if you could share the deck, we'll also link to it to your slide share if you have something like that.
Sure thing.
Thank you so much. This was amazing and a lot of great learnings even for me. I've been following your blog and your yearly revenue blogs for years. You've always been an inspiration, Steve. So thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thanks, Path. The same thing too. I've always really been fascinated to see the stuff you've been up to, and just once you've turned the microphone on me for a little bit.
Yeah, we'll try to get you back, Steve, with some more interesting stuff as well. And happy
Cool.
to join any of your events anytime.
Thank you, Path.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for joining the session and keep coming back. We will have this happening every month. We will have great speakers lined up for you, and we'll keep coming back to you with more news on what's happening next with Joomla. Thank you so much.